And we are live. Hello, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, those who bounce in between. It's your friend Comrade Dankey here, and we are joined here today by our dear friends and comrades, Leftism Today, Darksnovia, and Tactical Spork from the Iron Curtain podcast. And the topic of today's video is Vaush.
Oh boy, bum bum bum.
Now, Leftism Today had a pretty lengthy debate with Vaush recently, where he came out of that whole exchange looking like a little bitty baby boy who didn't know anything about socialist theory. And he very kindly labeled you a lunatic on his upload.
Yeah, on his YouTube.
Yep. So what was that like? What was it like debating Vaush?
You know, it's funny because I actually first emailed him at like April 3rd or like over 2 months ago before it actually started, and then I had to wait forever to actually get on his show. But getting on, I was pretty nervous, but by the end of it, I mean, most of what we talked about, he just completely avoided. So by the end, it was just like a lot of emotional rants, and I guess he did that to like try to captivate his audience or whatever. But
Yeah, I mean, I'll give it to him. Vaush, he does do a lot of showmanship. He knows how to like keep an audience captivated. Yeah, I feel like he's missed his calling. He really just should have been someone more along the lines of like Destiny or something like that, rather than try to go the full socialist route. I feel like he's best talking about like more simple topics.
Yeah, I feel like if he was around, if he was doing the same thing like 5 years ago, somebody pointed this out, I think on your Discord server. If he was around like 5 years ago, he would probably be like one of those like new atheist, like Sargon of Akkad, like enlightened liberals or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It seems
definitely.
like he's kind of trying to catch in on the breadtube trend, because it's hot right now. But he hasn't actually taken any time to really learn anything about history or any kind of theory at all. So he just kind of goes for the most easy, milk toast sort of all-encompassing thing. He calls himself like an anarchist from what I've seen, but yet he obviously is basically just a standard social democrat. Like he I doubt he's even read any anarchist theory.
What's really infuriating is he doesn't just misrepresent, communism and socialism. He misrepresents anarchism and claims to be someone that represents these ideologies when he doesn't know anything about them.
Exactly. I mean, there's a lot of actually good bread tubers out there who actually put a lot of effort and time into, I mean, presenting themselves and like putting themselves out there with, real ideas. But I mean, from what I've seen of this guy, he basically just kind of shoots off the cuff with whatever comes to mind without really even thinking about it.
Xanderhall is the same way, honestly. When no one actually talks about the other bread tubers besides Xanderhall and Vaush.
Yeah, these days it even seems like ContraPoints has sort of fallen off the wayside. Nobody really ContraPoints is sort of old news. Somebody like Sean. Sean, he's often like considered a high-profile bread tuber, but to me, he's always been like a gamer, like YouTuber first, and a political YouTuber second.
I actually like Sean a lot,
Yeah.
especially because like he's smart. He does his research. I mean, I'm not exactly sure what his political stances are, but like he always attacks the right wing. He always goes after the people who are like they're really causing problems and have real like problematic views and things like that. He always punches right. He never punches left, which is great. Like everyone can kind of get behind that, regardless of what your tendency is. But obviously, that doesn't cause drama. It doesn't get you clicks. I mean, it gets him clicks because he's really good. But like, yeah, I mean, it's very easy for people who don't have a lot of an education to basically just start causing shit, basically.
Yeah, and I mean, that's not to say that it is easy to defend the left. that it is easy to defend the USSR. I mean, obviously, you have to do a lot of research. There is a ton of propaganda out there that you have to look at. You have to be able to determine whether or not this is a valid source or not. And so it becomes very easy for somebody to buy into the left on a very surface level, while in reality not really understanding what they mean. Somebody mentioned it here, that Vaush called himself an anarcho-syndicalist. He also called himself a market socialist and a Marxist.
Yeah,
So
really,
how do you reconcile those three?
it's because he doesn't really. He's basically just throwing out things that sound good, that are easy, but doesn't actually really think about any of the actual specificities of any of, like, these are completely contradictory ideologies.
Exactly.
Like 100%. Like you can't be all three of these things at once, but because like nobody wants to call themselves an ML or whatever, or associate themselves with any actually existing socialism, you basically just have to throw out a hodgepodge, like kind of grocery basket of different leftist terms to kind of, and like people don't even know what the difference is. So it's like, oh yeah, of course, anarchist, market socialist, cool.
And before any Vaush fan in the viewers accuses me of being a hater, I do want to say I think Vaush has some utility. I think Vaush does some good things. Tactical Spork made a great point. When you punch right, that's great. It's only when he punches left that's when we have a problem. When if he wants to devote his YouTube career to debating Nazis and shit, fine. Have at it, Haas. Go all out. I really, more power to you. But the second that you start comparing us to Nazis, fellow leftists, Marxist Leninists, that's where we have a problem. And I've got some Vaush clips to play. The first one is from his Resident Evil 7 stream. And hopefully, if I can get the share screen working correctly.
No way, dude. You have to be lying. This guy said, Vaush said all value subjective and LTV is just philosophy. You have to be lying. No way.
Oh boy.
One of the funniest things I watched from Vaush was when he was debating Sargon and he went out and said that he was a Marxist, and then he goes like 5 minutes later and says he's an anarchist.
God.
Sargon of Akkad did a video about the left want anything but socialism. It's like, this is the kind of clown that Vaush is. He makes it seem like the left don't know what their ideology is.
Yeah, definitely. He, it's not in this clip, but in the second clip, he even rants about like people asking him to read and why that's a bad thing. He doesn't want to read theory. I don't know if he's like got a reading problem or something, but at this point, he says something along the lines of like, nobody has told me which books to read. And I think that's bullshit. Like, you can't have like 75,000 subscribers and be this self-proclaimed socialist on the internet and somehow not be aware of which books people have recommended you to read.
Right.
It's
also,
just kind of a total excuse on his part.
Yeah, kind of going off of this comment that Kaliox said about labor theory of value is just philosophy. Okay, so I mean, just because something is a philosophical concept does not mean that it's not like valid or true. Like anything that you think is probably like, if you put any sort of value judgment on anything, that's philosophy. If you say anything is good or bad, that's philosophy. But like, that doesn't mean it's not true, right? Philosophy is not like a synonym for like just something you made up, right? Like, okay, what Marx means when he says value is created by labor is basically like, unless he doesn't just think, he talks about this in Gotha program, not all value is created by labor. You can also get value from nature as well, right? Like if you just get flowers from outside, you didn't really have to put that much labor into it, and those flowers have value, so that value is coming from nature without labor going into it. But also, like, if you want to transform like a tree into a table, if you want to transform that wood into like a table, the value of that goes up from just the base amount of what the wood is worth to whatever now the table is worth more. So what has changed about that wood? It's had labor put into it to turn it into a table, right? So
Yeah.
clearly you can see that the value of something is being determined by its labor. And I mean, that value is a socially constructed thing, right? Like money is a social construct that we create. It, it's just because it's a social construct does not
Yeah.
mean that it's completely invalid. Doesn't, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, just because in theory you could find someone who would maybe find more value like in a raw material rather than like a refined commodity, that doesn't mean that what Marx was trying to do is form a model on how to analyze the capitalist system. He wasn't interested in these crazy outlying examples like, oh, well, what if somebody literally thought that garbage was valuable? Like, to that person, garbage now has value. It's, Marx was not concerned with these kind of strange, abstract gotcha concepts.
Well,
I mean, even
actually,
though
he does address this actually. So
oh, really?
a lot of people say like, oh, they make like an argument called the mud pie argument. So it's like, oh, so let's say I spent all day making mud pies and putting a lot of labor into that. Does that suddenly mean that the mud pies are valuable because labor has been put into them? Can this comment if not nice. But Marx actually defines value as he defines labor value as socially necessary labor time.
Yeah, it's
So
literally in the first chapter of Capital too.
yeah, so it's not just just because you put work into like banging your head against the wall does not mean that that is valuable labor. It has to also have a social function because labor is inherently a social process, and production is a social process that requires multiple people to participate in it.
Nah, it just sounds like you're reading too many of those books. Boring. I'd rather play my video game. I'd rather boot up my Resident Evil 7 and and collect some super chat money. But yeah, let's check out some of these clips because I feel like we will all find them very entertaining. So this is the first one. This is from his Resident Evil 7 stream. Hopefully I'll start it in the right spot.
Hear something funny? I saw this posted on BreadTube because I get Google alerts in case anything of mine gets posted to BreadTube because I have like an emotional investment in like conquering that subreddit one day. But Dankey Kang, does everyone remember Dankey Kang? That Tanky? Yeah, you remember? The Tanky shit talked me for like a month and I brought him on and he like flubbed his way through a conversation.
So yeah, that what he calls a conversation, that never actually happened. The story is pretty interesting. Like, I came on his stream and he pretty much like made fun of me the whole time. And yeah, there was no conversation to be had there.
Yeah, I remember I watched the clip of it and he was just playing some like weeb game or whatever and he was like semi-responding to you.
Yeah, and this isn't the first time that he has shared this lie that I have had a conversation with him. I wish I had, but it's weird. Like, why would you lie about something that is so easily verifiable? Like, not even just to us, but to like Vaush fans in general. Like, did he not think that like none of his 75,000 subscribers would go to the Sekiro stream and like watch his exchange with me and see what really happened?
Yeah, I mean, basically, we just gotta hope that his fans are more intellectually curious than he is, because if they actually took, a couple hours to learn really about any of the things that he is talking about, they're gonna basically find out real quick he's just a grifter.
It's like Vaush's entire YouTube following is just hanging on the hope that none of them do like the slightest bit of research or digging. It's pretty sad.
He made another video on me. It's an 1 and 10-minute live stream.
Yes.
I just skipped around a little bit. Like, it's just like this little video.
Skipped around.
Or anything. But it was really funny, dude. The Tankies, they act just like the alt-right.
Yep.
I mean, this dude is basically streaming probably like at least 8 hours a day. So I don't know why he thinks that making like an hour-long commentary video is really something so crazy.
Exactly. Like this stream is 6 hours long, and he has the gumption to call me out for doing a stream that's an hour long, and we didn't even scratch the surface. Like, if we tried to talk about like all the dumb stuff Vaush has said, like in his tenure on YouTube, we could very easily have a 6-hour stream dedicated to that. But you know, what fun would that be? Eventually it would just get monotonous.
Yeah, basically.
Where rather than like trying to constructively examine problems they see in my behavior, they try to just like, well, they act the way like Ethan and Ralph would. So like a significant portion of this stream is like it's like the CP and the sexual harassment thing, you know? So it's not like, I think that Vaush is
Oh, okay. So with that, Vaush made some pretty bad comments recently where he compared, he basically said, since commodity production under capitalism exploits people, it is just as bad to purchase a PC than it is to purchase child pornography.
Oh, dear Lord.
Because it's all exploitation at the end of the day. You know, this was his great big brain take on child porn.
Oh, geez. Okay. Well, there's a lot.
Yeah.
Literal sexual slavery.
And how dare we comment on that? How dare we call him out on having that bad take? Because that means we're just like the alt-right, apparently. Because I guess some people in the alt-right attack Vaush with that too. I mean, that doesn't make it wrong. Just because like a broken clock is right twice a day. Sometimes even the chuds are able to call out a bad take when they see it.
Well, Vaush is just giving ammunition for the right to claim that the left are pedophile apologists.
Yeah, he is.
That's the problem. That's one thing he doesn't understand.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm curious. Does Vaush support any past country or any kind of past project at all in history? Like, what I'm trying to figure out, like, does he actually have any sort of historical basis for his views at all? That
I tried to talk to him about he brought up like the Black Army and Nestor Makhno, and as soon as I talk about like Makhno's like extreme anti-Semitism and his enslavement of peasants, he just like pivots away and says, "Oh, but they were a good example of an experiment," but he doesn't grant the same, idea or privilege to the USSR. Like, he literally says, "I don't support any previous society."
Oh God! And like, okay, the Black Army. Okay, they were a state by any Marxist definition of the word because they tried to hold a monopoly on power in the territories that they controlled, right? They held a monopoly on violence, or at least they tried to. They confiscated pretty much, they would go into towns, they would confiscate pretty much anything that they wanted, in claiming that it was like, oh, it's common property, so we can just, come in, take all your stuff, raid your village, and now you're liberated. And then they would, like you said, they would conduct pogroms, and also they had conscription into their basically bandit gang. They would just ride around the countryside taking whatever they liked and basically just claiming to be revolutionaries. Like, it's really, I don't know why people really idealize these clowns, because they really produced absolutely nothing of value. They just wandered around in Ukraine in areas where the Red Army and the White Army were not fighting, and they just claimed that territory at that particular moment was under their control, but then they would leave just as quickly.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but somebody once asked if Vaush knew what the CNT was, and he didn't know. They had to tell him that it was Catalonia.
And he said I did see that part. He said he didn't even support Catalonia, right? So like,
Yeah, he said he didn't support Catalonia.
Literally nobody is good enough for Vaush. No movement in the past has ever been good enough to win Vaush's approval. Your revolution would have to be like spotless and sparkling clean in order for Vaush to like give his stamp of approval on it and say like, all right, I guess this one's legit.
yeah, I mean, you'd have to literally like establish stateless communism like after one day. Like you just behead Jeff Bezos, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, everybody throw their guns into this pile here. We're just gonna melt them all down. We no more need to do anything else. Society is basically perfect now. We have no classes left.
Oh, but it gets much worse.
Appropriating leftist literature by failing to fully understand this book and that book. It's like Vaush is a useless fucking degenerate piece of shit, and here's why.
Wait, let me rewind it just a bit.
Misappropriating thing, you know? So it's not like I think that Vaush is misappropriating leftist literature by failing to fully understand this book and that book. It's
that is exactly what we say in all of our videos about Vaush. That's what we criticize him on. We never call him a degenerate. This is something that he says like we do. We never call him out with like good criticisms. We just call him a degenerate. Like I have literally never called Vaush a degenerate in any of my streams or any of my videos.
Yeah, I mean, he has some pretty, icky views, like you were mentioning before. But
Yeah.
I mean, I don't call people degenerates. That's kind of not really a great term in my opinion.
He is trying to dog whistle here and compare us with the far right. He's trying to say like these guys and fascist are the same thing. So he's trying to like sick his fan base on us and be like, these people are fascist. They need to be bashed.
Yeah, I mean, like it's just pretty ridiculous because I mean, I don't know Darksnovia and Leftism Today. I don't know your guys' views too much, but I mean, I think we can all agree we're pretty much all in favor of like indigenous rights, LGBTQ rights, women's rights, all that kind of stuff, and we uphold socialist projects because they made a lot of progress in those areas. So I mean, it's really ridiculous considering that he is equating us with like reactionary views when honestly we are further to the left than he is. We're more progressive than he is.
And another thing he said the alt-right does is attack him about his sexual harassment history. Now, for those of you who don't know, Vaush used his Discord server to sexually harass female members. And when they told people about this, he threatened them. And Vaush fans conspired to cover the whole thing up. So he said, like, oh, the right wing attacks me on the child porn comment I made. Oh, the right wing, the alt-right, they attack me on the sexual harassment thing. Like, those aren't issues that I think anybody would take issue with, regardless of like what side of the aisle you're on, hopefully.
Yeah, he's just really taking Joe Biden to heart, it seems.
Yep. He and Joe Biden definitely have that in common.
It's like Vaush is a useless fucking degenerate piece of shit, and here's why. It's really, really funny. They always do it this way.
Literally, we have never done it that way.
Yeah,
Dude,
I'm curious. Like,
real.
the
handlebar mustache. These guys aren't real lefties.
And see, when Biden loses, they continuum, this pipeline of
Did you hear about Jesse Grant earlier? Yeah.
alt-right fascist scum that he constantly appeals to, and any socialist state that actually accomplished something.
A tanky defending any socialist state that actually accomplished something.
So yeah, I mean, you see how he skips around and he starts reading the comments instead of like actually addressing what we're saying in the video.
Yeah, he basically moves like 10 minutes at a time between clips.
Yeah.
He's like, this guy is a lunatic, everybody, but let me not show you the kind of crazy shit that he says. God forbid if you hear like 10 seconds of uninterrupted dialogue with Darksnovia and Dankey Kang, you might learn something.
If you were to expose our clips, we would just come off as being normal people that have issues with him.
Yep.
He does this to paint us as the worst kind of people possible, but Vaush treats his audience like idiots. It's not like these people can't go to both of our channels and watch our videos and find out that we're not lunatics, we're not crazy, that he's misrepresenting us.
Exactly. Like, if you're a Vaush fan, you're gonna have to live with the knowledge that Vaush thinks you're stupid. I mean, that's just the truth. He thinks that all of his fans are morons and they won't notice this kind of thing.
This is the same essentialization that neo-Nazis engage in. So they would
once again comparing us with Nazis, comparing us with the alt-right. The grift never stops with this guy.
Say like white hater.
Oh yeah, the countries that we support literally crushed Nazism for good. Like, they didn't tolerate Nazis in their country at all. And after like, you know, countries in Eastern Europe, like, socialism went away in these countries, all of a sudden you see giant you know, we see the far right being, you know, suddenly a big factor because there's nothing there to basically stop them.
Yeah, I mean, what's Vaush's solution to that? Probably to join them.
Or what about the Ukraine? That's always had a problem with Nazi sympathies. Yet everyone's quiet about that in BreadTube.
Honestly.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, BreadTube basically just does not touch on foreign policy ever. Like, even good BreadTubers, they just always talk about like U.S. domestic issues whatever. They just do not touch anything that happens in any other country that's outside of like Europe or the United States. So that kind of gives them like a very distorted and myopic view of like history and world situations, because basically it's like, okay, you're left wing on domestic issues, but like on foreign issues, believing any other country, you're basically like only accepting extremely far right Western media narratives. Like, the United States absolutely loves to just co-opt like far right movements in other countries and present them as like heroic like freedom fighters or something like that, and people just buy it because they have no concept of world history or world politics at all.
Yeah, here's a fun fact. We had a commenter before the stream went live who mentioned the Soviet-Afghanistan war. Go back and watch Rambo 3, and at the end of it, there's a message. It's like, this movie is dedicated to the brave Mujahideen fighters in Afghanistan.
Vaush dedicates his stream to the brave Mujahideen fighters fighting the Tankies.
Yeah. And speaking of following the Western narrative, let's see what Vaush says.
Anyone who attacks the culture of the only successful civilization. It's exactly the same thing. Rather than like directly naming problems they have to essentialize and then be reductive with that essentialization. It's really, really, really funny. All tanky talking points are literally identical. It's literally the same every time. Lol, read theory, but I want to actually tell you what theory or in what way, because I haven't actually read it myself.
Vaush, if you're watching this, I will literally send you a reading list. I will send you some. I know actually reading is kind of hard actually, so maybe maybe a podcast. I have a whole bunch of podcasts that are really great. I have a whole bunch of YouTube videos that you can just watch in your free time. Yeah, just reach out to us. We'd be happy to provide you with a ton of great resources.
Just literally go to Paul Cockshot's channel and just watch his videos. Like, there's literally no excuse anymore.
Check out Hakeem. Hakeem is great, Vaush. Please watch him.
But see, he'll just skip around. He'll skip around and he'll like look at the top few comments and he'll just say, "Oh, this is a lunatic Tanky. I'm not gonna listen to this guy."
Yeah, it's like he thinks we're like cavemen or something. We're just like, oh, read theory. Oh, theory good. But like,
let's be honest, Vaush is an elitist. He looks down on everyone, including his own audience. He talks to all of us, down to us like we're all like ignorant children.
Yeah, he's got a big personality complex.
Also, if he actually paid attention to any sort of ML actual literature or just listened to MLs for any extended period of time beyond like 5 seconds, he would actually see that we actually do have a lot of criticisms of past socialist states, but we understand that they were operating in the real world. And so, we actually engage with them on a specific case by case level and try and understand the context behind different things that we might not agree with. Like,
Exactly. Yeah. I tried explaining this to a Vaush fan, and eventually I came away with the idea that you cannot have anything remotely positive to say about these countries or you're a tanky. It's like you can't even defend them at any level, on any stage, without them labeling you a tanky. Like, if you apologize or defend the USSR in any way, shape, or form, like, you are just authoritarian red fascist scum.
Well, I could throw that same argument for those who are defenders of U.S. Foreign policy and Americans' history. I could argue that they're a fascist apologist because they're defending what has been essentially a fascist, an apartheid state throughout most of its existence.
Well, yeah, even today, I mean, the U.S., like, we might have an extremely just limited fake democracy in the United States, but around the world, the U.S. literally operates as a fascist organization. Like, they will not tolerate any dissent. Like, they might give people in the imperial core a tiny amount of rights and maybe a little bit of scraps off of the table.
Yeah.
But if you go anywhere in South America, in Central America, in the Middle East, in Asia, if you ask them what the U.S. is like, they will tell you that the U.S. manages their states in a basically fascist style. Like, if you think that the U.S. is more democratic or more like free, quote unquote, than like any other socialist country on Earth, then you're basically letting a very chauvinistic attitude kind of dominate how you see things.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of chauvinistic attitude, we're about to see a little bit of that.
Radlib, you're infantile, other insults that I've cribbed off of other cooler tankies that I've seen. We're the only ones who actually accomplished anything. If by accomplishing something you mean creating like fucking like death camp civilizations that were worse in every material way than the United States of America.
Okay, Vaush, if you somehow are skipping around in the video and you come across this exact moment right here, please go to Hakim's YouTube channel right now and watch the video. Socialism gives a better quality of life. He explains like point by point how if you compare socialist countries to capitalist countries that are at the same level of economic development, then socialist countries beat out capitalist countries in literally like every single metric of standard of living, housing, healthcare, education standards, literacy standards, all of that. Like, basically, if you actually compare socialist and capitalist countries on the same level, socialist countries absolutely trounce them in every way.
Yeah. I mean, let's look at how socialist Vietnam is faring against the coronavirus compared to, this brilliant United States of America that Vaush seems to think has much better material conditions.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, like, socialist countries, for the most part, are actually more democratic than anything that we have in the United States, like, by far. They actually have more representation. And often, most socialist countries actually have multi-party elections. So, like, it's really not, like, you can't even compare the two. It's just objectively better.
Yeah.
What an accomplishment, man. They say at least MLs actually do something. It's true, they do something. Anarchists briefly create anarchist societies. MLs immediately and sustainably create anti-communist authoritarian societies.
That doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't.
Like,
okay,
isn't that what America does?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, like, literally, I made a meme about this like the other day, but basically it's like, Vaush, do you literally think that like the CIA or whatever is gonna look at your like libertarian market socialist like confederation of communes and they're gonna be like, well, we were going to overthrow these guys and invade their country. But actually, these guys aren't tankies. You know, they're not. They're they're actually pretty cool. All right, you guys can stick around. You don't need to, have an army or any kind of police force or anything like that to defend yourself. We're totally fine with you guys just doing what you want. The CIA is really just an anti-tanky group. That's all they care about.
Well, this is why I say that I believe it, that Vaush may potentially be a crypto fascist, because his views don't seem to be very left wing at all. He has far more in common with the far right than he wants to admit in these videos.
Yeah, the only thing that Nazis and the CIA fear most is a loosely organized, decentralized, stateless, weaponless, defenseless confederation of communes that have no coordination or ability to resist them in any way. That's really what they're scared of, guys.
Yeah, it's like the joke Moppin made. Like, Trotskyists are so radical they have to get the CIA to publish them.
Yeah, but at least Trotskyists read theory, unlike this clown.
Honestly, yeah.
That's the most positive thing I will ever say about Trotskyists. I think they're clowns as well.
Yeah, I don't think he heard many of the typical meme arguments he does when I talk to him. He was a little bit dazed and confused.
Yeah, I bet. This clip, it's got like 3 more minutes of it, but it's 3 golden minutes.
It's very
Just full
consistent.
of nuggets.
But not for a moment in any corner of the world has an ML succeeded in creating anything even remotely resembling the dictatorship of the proletariat.
Blah.
That's bullshit.
Galaxy brain.
Platform Luna, and she would school you on the history of Vietnam. But wait,
yeah.
You don't want a Vietnamese woman to make you look like a fool. No, he would seriously call her a tanky. If he put her on there.
He's literally farther to the right than Non-Compete, the anarchist. Like, he is like Non-Compete would school this guy, and he's literally an anarchist. But he's an actual anarchist who actually like understands the world and like actually is intellectually curious about things.
Where's your curiosity, Vaush? Where did it go?
It's funny how he won't
with Jesse.
He won't debate Caleb Maupin, who's actually traveled around the world and visited most of these countries that America has victimized, and he's going to call him in his fanboys not knowing anything about socialism or leftism.
Yeah. Here's the thing, Vaush. Societies adapt to meet the conditions that they're under at any given point in time. So before you call out like Vietnam for like having an army and a police force to, prevent itself from being invaded, you have to understand that these countries have been dealing with like literal brutal genocide by the United States, like constant threat of invasion, constant sabotage, constant like everything. So they literally have to adapt with a state apparatus in order to kind of counter these massive threats from the most powerful military in the entire world, right? Like, you're really going to school the Vietnamese people who fought the French and fought the Americans for like 30, 40 years. Oh, and the Japanese for like having an army and having a state apparatus, because like they're not exactly what you want. They're not stateless market socialists or whatever, idiotic you came up with.
I think Vaush just thinks non-whites are incapable of building, a civilization.
Well, one thing's for sure, you've had these hardcore like Viet Minh soldiers. They've been living in the swamps. They've been digging trenches. They've been hiking, living in the jungle for days. You have people like Che Guevara fighting against the regime in Cuba, going through asthma attacks and stuff in the middle of the jungle. But none of that compares to the hardship and the experience that Vaush has. He knows what a revolution looks like. And all of those guys, the Viet Minh, Che Guevara and his crew, they're all just a bunch of tankies. They're basically fascists.
They should have just listened to him. Actually, like
They should have.
he came up with all of these ideas in like a solid like 10-15 minutes of thinking about it. So like, if only Vaush had been around in like 1950, he could have gone to Cuba, he could have gone to Vietnam, and he could have told them the secret. He could have told them exactly how to structure their societies, and then they wouldn't be Tankies. They would be perfect.
Yeah.
Grant, oh, apparently Jesse Grant got blown out so hard he's like vague posting suicide shit or something. I can't take any responsibility for this. Not my fault.
So it looks like he's done here, but he actually keeps going. This is where I made the mistake. I cut it off the first time.
Nah, Kabocha, Vietnam is a lot better than a lot of other attempts, but I'd say it still falls very short.
Thank you for that incisive commentary.
Why not? If that's how you, if you actually believe that, get Luna on your stream sometime.
He really needs, like, I don't know. Luna would tear him apart.
Luna tore apart Destiny when he was lying about Vietnam, and she would do the same to Vaush.
I find it particularly bad when American leftists shit on Vietnamese socialism. It's like, we haven't done enough to that country. Now you've got to criticize them from a left-wing perspective too. What are you doing?
Yeah, honestly, like, how arrogant can you possibly be that you think that you know better than like an entire country that has like been resisting and being destroyed by imperialism for like decades? Like, you're really just gonna come up out of your mom's basement and go down to that country and say, "Oh, you guys are doing okay, but actually, you're really not measuring up to my standards."
I have nothing but respect for the Cubans and the Vietnamese. They've been resisted the worst empire in history, and they've survived to the modern day. I mean,
literally planes flying over and dumping Agent Orange on illiterate, impoverished farmers, and they still managed to succeed. Like,
yeah, I mean, we bombed Vietnam back to the Stone Age, and they still managed to pull through. And now, but let's cancel it, everybody. Let's pull the plug because Vaush has disapproved.
We dropped more bombs on Vietnam than we dropped in all of World War II and Korea put together. And I think even World War One. Like, we just literally just genocided both the Vietnamese and the Cambodia and Laos were also right on the border, and they caught actually a huge amount of that too. So yeah, I mean, Vaush knows better. Yeah.
And keep in mind that socialist Vietnam is sending international aid in the time of coronavirus to the United States. Just let that sink in. The country that dropped Agent Orange on them, Vietnam is sending them aid. That's remarkable.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's more than Americans deserve, if you ask me, honestly.
I mean, and Cuba is sending its doctors to the most poor and the least powerful countries. Like, they send them to countries in Africa. Like, oh man, they're just doing it to like curry favor or something like that, and like get for propaganda or something. Well, why are they only going after countries that can't pay them back, right? Or like countries that really have no international influence? They're doing it because of international solidarity, because they believe in helping the most poor and downtrodden countries first.
Yeah, Fidel Castro had a great speech where he basically said, like, I don't understand why people are so confused as to why the Cubans are helping the Angolans in Africa. And he's like, to us, it's not confusing. It's obvious. It's our international obligation to help these people.
They were helping the Angolans defend themselves against literal apartheid South Africa.
Yeah.
Yeah, dictatorship of the proletariat isn't even socialism. I'm just...
Have you not read Karl Marx or Frederick Engels, you fool?
Having your country run by workers is not socialism, guys. Come on.
You know, it's like this clip, it's only like 3 or 4 minutes long, but every single sentence is stupid. Like every single sentence we have to like address what it says because it's just a bad take.
Okay,
This is what it's
dictatorship of
like
the
watching a
proletariat
Vaush
means workers are in control of the country. It means that your country and your state apparatus is dictated by what workers want, right? That is the most democratic thing you can like ask for.
By definition, a dictatorship of the proletariat is socialism. It's like, what universe, what planet do you live on, Vaush? Like, Jesus, grab a dictionary.
Talking about a society of the workers. They haven't even succeeded in creating that. What did Destiny get banned for? There was just some cock in his stream for like a nanosecond. It's not relevant. Yeah, it probably won't be, Gems. Why do you think these states turned out this way? Okay, listen, here's my hot radlib anarchist take. Are you ready for it? Nobody's ever ready for it,
Oh,
but I'm
boy.
throwing it out there anyway, okay? At the end of the day, these people who venerate like the People's Republic of China and the Soviet Union don't really care about the workers. They definitely don't care about democracy, and they certainly don't care about like the liberation of the proletariat.
Talk
Oh,
about
man.
self-projection, Vaush.
Exactly.
I mean, look how you talk to your audience. You talk down to them like they're stupid little children that can't, read. It's like,
Now, Vaush, look, I'm not a tanky, okay? I'm a libertarian socialist, so I believe in having a democratic system where it's organized by workers' councils who elect representatives who go up to regional levels, and then they conduct debates, they hold elections, and then they elect people up to a higher level committee where that runs the whole country. Oh wait, that's what ML countries are organized by. So, yeah, like literally, like it just shows that he absolutely has no idea how these actually work. He like probably saw like an '80s movie that was portraying like, just a bunch of miserable people in, the Soviet Union. Oh, they're so sad. Oh, they live under like the thumb of one guy who runs everything. Like that's literally a cartoon character. That's like looking at like a Ben Garrison political cartoon and thinking like, oh, that's how the US is organized.
He watched Animal Farm like in middle school, and he thinks he knows like that's what happened. The
Vaush
pig
needs to just Google what the Politburo is. I mean, does this guy really think that Stalin just ran around doing whatever he want? Like, Stalin had major contentions throughout his career, and Stalin was repeatedly voted down, even on like smallest issues.
So is it that Vaush won't look this stuff up because he's not smart, or is it because he just doesn't care? I think it's because he just doesn't care.
I think it's a combination of both.
I think he's found the right. Basically, he knows just enough so that his audience doesn't catch on that he basically doesn't know anything. Like he's basically just trying to like basically keep an audience that is basically doesn't know anything, but he's trying to keep them intentionally from looking into any of these issues.
He's like one of those stolen valor soldiers, but for socialists. He's like a stolen valor socialist.
Oh, that's another thing too. Is somebody said Vaush didn't even know that co-ops existed at all when that was basically their agricultural sector was co-ops.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's also a lot of countries, socialist country. I mean, like Yugoslavia had issues, but like most of their country economy was run by co-ops. So like, come on, dude, please. Like, you think that all socialist countries are the same? That they're all just run by like one dude? Like that's like just look at like anything that's not like a cartoon, and you'll understand.
For somebody who calls himself a Marxist or a market socialist, I highly doubt he would be able to tell you anything about Yugoslavia or Tito or any of that stuff.
Oh, Dankey, can you pin this for a moment? Spinus, what he added you with? Yeah, so
philosophy vid about Marx's transitional stage, lower stage communism, higher stage communism distinction. A lot of people simplify it to two which causes
Causes
confusion.
Okay, good question. So, Finnish Bolshevik actually made a really good response to that. It becomes really confusing because the way Marx uses the words socialism and communism, and the way Lenin used it, and the way other people use it today, are often very different things, and it causes a lot of confusion. But Finnish Bolshevik goes through the whole thing and kind of breaks it down because Cuck philosophy kind of I think he had good intentions, but I think he got really confused by all of this stuff.
It's like the meme argument from Zexasy. It basically, the whole thing is that they treat lower and higher phase communism as two separate modes of production, but if you read Gotha, it's not. It's two modes of production: capitalism and communism. And then you have the transitionary period. So there's no distinction to be made. And even back then, like going back to the terms, if Marx called socialism the lower stage, it doesn't really matter because back in the day they also called themselves social democrats. So terms change.
Lenin called himself a social democrat.
Yeah.
Up to like 1911 or something, 1915. Like it was like social democrat back then was like what Marxists called themselves. So I mean, the words change a lot.
Yeah, this is just to finish up this first Vaush clip, and then we can move on to the second one. It's a little bit shorter, and there's not really that much to go into on the second one, but it's still just as bad.
What they care about is anti-Americanism, anti-Western imperialism, and having like a super cool, like edgy, like non-America state. When I refer to Tankies, I'm usually...
All right. So notice how he called out like the anti-Western imperialism. So was that like a dog whistle to the old Soviet imperialism argument?
Oh boy.
Well, okay, he's not wrong that we're against U.S. imperialism and Western imperialism.
Yeah,
but we're against it primarily because what it's done to the whole world.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, if you don't like the authority that socialist states have, you need to be against these countries to become maybe like more closed off or like more strict about things, is because they're constantly under a state of siege. Like imagine if the United States was like constantly under siege by like aliens that were invading, that were like infinitely more powerful. Like we would have to be a lot more defensive in how things were organized, right? Like if we were constantly under threat of aliens like overthrowing our government or something, and they had like vastly more military superior technology, like we would have to probably change how how the United States was organized, right? Like that is basically the situation that all of these countries are in all the time. They're not just operating in a vacuum where they can just do everything exactly perfectly like they want they ideally want to.
Exactly. It's not like these states go out of their way to be oppressive, or they go out of their way to, trample on human rights. And, not saying they do that stuff anyway, but even if they did, it would be because there are stressors which force them to that point.
Yeah, like Vaush should just watch Michael Parenti on stream, and then I'm pretty sure all of his followers would just like peace out.
I think if you were to show Michael Parenti, it's a lot. He probably would lose like a good percentage of his audience, because they'd realize, you know what Michael Parenti says makes sense.
Yeah,
and they would probably
like skim through Michael Parenti's speech and just say like, oh, he's a tanky, he's crazy. This guy,
he's a lunatic.
Okay, this is an example of a leftist, and I use this loosely, not getting over their American exceptionalism mindset. This is the example. We don't hate America because we hate our country for no reason. We hate our country because we've actually studied our country's history and what it's done to other countries, and what it's currently doing now. It's like, and not to mention how it treats the working class, around the world and in our own country. I think our reasoning for being anti-American is pretty valid, and being defensive of past and present socialist experiments is also valid.
And we don't hate like Americans. We hate American capitalism, American imperialism, which is really being run by like a very small percentage of the American population. Like the ultra wealthy of the country are really dictating most of this, and like our system is perpetuating it. So like we're not against like average, working Americans at all, and we're not against like the geographical country of America, of the United States, but like we are against the system that we have, right?
Yeah, it's like I say this to piss off conservatives, but I'm more patriotic than you because at least I care about the American people. All that conservatives care about are the interests of the bourgeois elite minority,
Yeah,
like Elon Musk or somebody like that.
The American system only cares about its people insofar as they can be exploited for profit, or they can basically just be bodies to throw into the imperial war machine.
Yeah,
like that's the extent of the interest that the United States has in its people. If they could somehow automate both of those things, replace everybody with robots, they would just throw us all to the curb immediately.
Yeah,
the United States, unlike most countries, has a special case of having the entire government being run by psychopaths.
Yeah.
I mean, no, can you name a single country in the world that is full of psychopathic, politicians that run our government? I can't name that many, with a few exceptions in Brazil and Bolivia.
Yeah, they're all far right.
Yeah, I mean, like the United States, like Congress and like usually the president, their approval rating is pretty much always hovering at like 15% approval rating, and yet somehow this is like a great example of democracy in action. Like there's pretty much everyone in the entire country just does not like the way that things are run, but yet we have no ability to change it whatsoever.
The American people hate their government probably more than any other, country in the world, but we're so, programmed with propaganda throughout our entire lives that it's very difficult for the average American to actually, recognize what is and what isn't propaganda.
Yeah, the United States is a one-party state. It's a capitalist one-party state that is divided into two almost identical fake parties that is designed to split the working class and get them to compete against each other.
Like the Democratic Party, I argue, is crypto-fascist, and the Republican Party is open fascist. I mean, there is like very little difference between the two in terms of their views, except minor differences.
Yeah, definitely.
Dankey, somebody, what's his name? Josh McGuire asked about what you think of the Subcomandante Marcos and the Neo-Zapatistas.
Let's see. I don't really know that much about the Zapatistas, to be honest. I mean, at this point, I have a critical support of them. From my understanding, they're Marxist. They're more like Maoist, but they are, Marxist. So, to that end, I do support them, and I support indigenous people's struggles all around the world.
Right. I mean, people like white anarchists in the U.S. often say that that the Zapatistas are anarchists, but the Zapatistas have specifically come out and said, "No, we're not anarchists. Stop calling us anarchists." Like they're essentially, they're like an indigenous Marxist, autonomous state, basically. That's so. Yeah, we support them for sure.
Would it be safe to say that everybody here supports like the self-determination for all oppressed nationalities?
I do.
Yeah.
I don't think it's anyone's business to tell people from another nation what they can and can't do in their own country. It's the people's problem to sort these problems out.
Yeah, I mean, like there's like a little bit of like subjectivity when it comes to like what exactly is like a nation. Like Stalin and Lenin talked about this with like they listed like a bunch of traits that like indicate that a nation is present. Like they all share a similar language, they all share a similar culture, etc., etc. But like in some cases, like not all of those situations apply. or whatever, like maybe they all have a bunch of different languages, but they all have a similar cultural identity or background or something. So like, yeah, like there's a little bit of subjectivity there, but yeah, overall we do absolutely.
Yeah. So this second clip of Vaush moving on is almost as bad as the first one. Not quite, but he still has some pretty bad takes in here. I feel like we should all give our reactions to it.
Mopping, okay? Oh, God. The Tankies are mad. Been doing a lot of reading lately. Every time I read anything about any theorist, it debunks something I've been told by a fucking Tanky dude. Like,
Can you elaborate on that?
Interesting. What are you reading, Vaush? Please let us know.
He's in a great University of Conquest, obviously.
He's probably reading about armchairism. That's probably what he's reading about.
Guys,
he's reading the Black Book of Communism.
He got a degree at Prager University, guys. Don't make fun of him. He's a highly educated scholar.
Graduated top of his class with honors.
it's crazy. It's so boring to me though. Like, why would I like?
It's so boring reading all these books. I mean, this is the Vaush mindset in a nutshell. Just like, dude.
Also, he never even says what book. So like, I really doubt he's even reading anything. He probably just like went into like Ask Anarchism like subreddit thread or something like that.
He read the first page of the Communist Manifesto and he's just like, all right, I'm done. Good job.
Oh my God. Argue about the issues. I should just have like available empirical data that we can argue over. Why would I argue over the correct interpretation of like some other person's work if I don't necessarily subscribe to those beliefs? You know what I mean?
Because Marx was an economist, you moron, and he came up with mathematical theories about his supporting his theories. He didn't just talk out of thin air.
Yeah, we don't support Marx because like we just worship him. We support him because he was right about things. Like if you read what he said, he actually like laid out a lot of basic economic principles that like was based on economic theories from other scholars at his time.
Like if you want imperialism, go read Cockshot. You'll get pages and pages of math and calculus. Like,
well, okay. Well, if you're gonna criticize something, you're gonna have to read up on it, Vaush. You can't just say, Marx's Leninism is wrong if you haven't even read any of it.
Okay, yeah, also the value of theory doesn't just like theory is not just like stuff that people made up out of like their heads because it sounded good. Like most of the time when you read theory written by revolutionaries, it's their experience, right? You're when you read it, you're reading the lessons that they've learned from actually putting things into practice. So it's not just like some abstract thing, like some guy's just thinking in an armchair, like, oh, that might be cool. Like they're trying to give you lessons from the past that they've had to learn through like hard fought struggle. Like people have died for like a lot of these lessons that we can learn, but we're so detached from like any kind of socialist history that like we're going in blind essentially. Like a lot of the things that Vaush has said like have been tried in the past and they haven't worked, and they had to modify what they did based on that experience if he actually took the time to learn from it.
Yeah, maybe it's like he thinks all theory is like anarchist theory, where it's very utopian and abstract and idealized. And so, he doesn't really see how this could apply in the real world. But anybody who takes the time to read theory, and by theory, we mean like ML theory, they'll see how it's just as applicable today as it was back in like 1917.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's literally why I am an ML, because like Marx was looking at the conditions of his time, and he pretty much, he accurately was able to analyze the stuff that was going on at his time, but he died before like the race for Africa or whatever, like in the 1890s, like what was it called, like the scramble for Africa. Yeah. So he didn't really he wasn't fully able to understand the impact of imperialism, but that's why like Lenin is so important, because he was able to update Marxist theory for the age of imperialism. So that's like pretty much the main reason why you should be an ML, because they actually carefully understood and updated this theory, and are, like, ML theory is constantly evolving. Like, we don't believe exactly the same things that like Lenin did in 1917 or whatever, like, but because it's a science and it constantly changes along with what happens in the world.
Yeah, I don't think Vaush really understands that. I think he views theory as something that is sort of static and unchanging. It's not a process. It's not scientific in any way. It's not analytical in any way. It's just people giving out their opinions. And if you have that opinion about theory, it just, one, it shows that you haven't really read any theory. But then, two, if that really was the case, I could see how that would discourage you from reading theory.
But
Like,
also,
if all it
I mean,
was
like,
just these old men looking in their crystal ball, or, you know, giving up their dream society and telling how it would run in this idealized fashion. You know, yeah, theory would be pretty useless, but that's not at all what theory is.
yeah, I mean, I know like reading a lot is difficult, especially for me. Like, I have a hard time reading like books cover to cover or anything like that. Like, it is very difficult for me, and I understand that. But there's so many resources now for you to understand these ideas, like, without always having to like read a book cover to cover. Like, go to Revolutionary Left Radio. It's a great podcast. They talk a lot about this kind of stuff, history, theory. Red Menace is like their sister podcast where they talk specifically about theory. It's really good. Pearls Around Table also for history, to understand like the actual historical conditions behind things. Definitely check that out too.
This ignorance on theory is a choice, at least at this point. Like, if you're a leftist and you don't read theory, yeah, you're willingly ignorant.
And keep in mind, he has 75,000 subscribers. He calls himself a socialist on the internet. So he's out of excuses. At this point, he makes probably thousands of dollars every stream he goes on. I've seen the super chats. It's insane. So at this point, he could literally hire somebody to read him theory while he goes to sleep at night.
Damn, I wish I could do that.
I mean,
if I had the money.
He's got a very comfortable life.
Like,
yeah, he's a privileged little liberal. That's what Caleb Maupin said.
He is. Exactly.
Disagreements. Like, I don't want to have. I'm not having an argument over whether or not Lenin believed this or that. I'm having an argument over whether or not this or that is good, and I don't need theory to make those conclusions.
That was just a bad sentence in general.
That's so stupid.
Oh my god! Like,
he would say the same thing about anarchist theory. He hasn't read that either.
People in his own chat are even calling him out. They're calling him like dyslexic and shit. Refuses to read.
I don't think Vaush understands that stuff like the falling rate of profit is literally like a math equation. Like, it's not just
like
something
observably true.
Yeah, like, it's not something that Marx just decided for like moral reasons or because he wanted it. Like, it's just literally mathematics. Like, you don't even have to understand the mathematics to.
Yeah.
If he doesn't want to read, there's always audiobooks, honestly. You can find all these audiobooks for free for some of these works. He doesn't.
You can listen to it while you play games, like, or whatever.
There's like literally no excuse.
Thing that I'm
Vaush, if you want to pay me, I will come on your stream and I will read theory to you.
Bro, just join my Capital reading.
Read Marxism versus Liberalism, the Stalin and H.G. Wells thing. I think we're planning on doing that on Iron Curtain.
Yeah.
But that is literally just like it's like if we were debating Vaush. Like, so Stalin and H.G. Wells are talking, but like at least H.G. Wells is like actually intelligent and like capable of like understanding, you know, or making complex arguments at least, right? Like, but yeah, like if anyone's listening to this, definitely check that out. We're gonna make an episode on that probably. So
debating Vaush would be like debating a creationist, because creationists think they understand how evolution works, but they really have no idea because they don't read science books. So it'll be the same thing with Vaush. You go up and you try to debate Vaush about socialism, and you quickly find out he doesn't know what he's talking about. So you have to walk back and you have to start him out with baby steps and explain to him what a dictatorship of the proletariat means. It's just like, wow, 79,000 subscribers. What a world. Truly a hero of the revolution.
Yeah, not even knowing the difference between the commodity form and commodity production. Like, the commodity form has existed since, like, cavemen, dude. Like, you really need to pick up a book.
Seriously.
Defending or attacking. You know, like, yeah. The only reason I want to read theory is to prove that they're liars. Yeah, they treat it like religious.
Well, we'll take you up on that challenge, Vaush. How about you read some theories? Prove us wrong.
I don't know what's in the theory, but I know that it would prove them wrong if I read it.
You know, if he wants to prove Tankies wrong, read Marx's Leninist literature, read anarchism, read all these things, prove it's wrong. But oh wait, that's beneath you, isn't it? You wouldn't have as much time to do a bunch of shitty streams on a daily basis if you actually focused on reading theory for a few hours a day.
Find one of your golden voiced fans like in your chat and pay him some of your super chat money to read State and Revolution to you.
Man.
Dogma. Theory can give you new arguments, perspectives you haven't thought of. Oh, I agree with that. I'm not disagreeing. It's valuable to read theory. I'm just saying that when it comes to actually arguing with these people, if I want to argue positions, then I shouldn't need to defer to theory. Theory was just the personal beliefs.
The personal beliefs.
Philosophy and economic theory. It's not like if I crack open like Das Kapital or State and the Revolution or whatever, I'm going to find a bunch of data charts.
Actually, yeah, you will. If you read Imperialism, the Highest Stage of Capitalism or something like that, like he literally breaks down like how capitalism leads to monopoly and then needs to expand outward, expand internationally, and he like uses like actual data and stuff. Like, I mean, like, yeah, pretty much all theory, or not all theory, but like, yeah, a lot of theory is actually very academically rigorous.
Yeah, I mean, it's full of charts. It's full of figures. Marx is always citing economic figures and stuff like that. It once again, it just gives up the ghost that Vaush has never even read these books. Like, he doesn't know what's in them. Because if he did, he wouldn't say stupid shit like this.
Well, here's the thing. It feels like, it's just, okay, sorry. If this stuff didn't matter, Vaush, then why is the CIA and the capitalist class are going out of their way to discourage, your average working class person to not read Marxism and dismiss it as a dustbin of history written by someone that did not understand economics, that never had a real job? Why are conservatives pushing that if Marxism didn't actually, analyze the world, did not have data to actually go on at the time?
Yeah, honestly.
I mean, so a lot of these writings, you could adjust it for the real world, and we're not asking to devour Das Kapital. You don't need to even read Das Kapital if you're starting out. You could read some of the easier stuff to read, like The Principle of Communism by Friedrich Engels. Like
read On Authority. It's like 1 page long. It'll debunk what you're saying.
Freaking Socialism, Utopian or Scientific by Friedrich Engels, State and Revolution by Lenin, What Needs to Be Done by Lenin, vice versa. There's so much stuff you can read. You don't have to read like the tome that is Das Kapital. That's dumb.
Seriously. And if you're going to read Das Kapital, David Harvey has a great YouTube channel dedicated to that. It's sort of like a reading companion / commentary. So if you're going to dive into Das Kapital, I highly suggest tuning into that David Harvey channel. I'll give a link to that in the description. But let's move on, because it gets even worse.
So I'm like, here's projected outcomes with the proletarian revolution. Here's projected outcomes of the Black Army succeeding the Red Army. Here's projected it's not. It's people who are very intelligent, reading and writing out their theories and ideas and so on and so forth.
if the Black Army had actually, succeeded, it would have to form a state in order to defend itself. Like, that's just obvious, It's just
So
kind of, yeah.
So Vaush is expecting books written contemporaneous with like the Russian Civil War to have interpretive power over how that war was going to turn out.
Idealism.
I mean, it's like, how dare you for not being able to predict the future? Is this Vaush's criteria for what constitutes like something that's worth reading?
Well, that's the thing. He's completely idealist. He basically thinks that like you can imagine like reality is determined by your thoughts as opposed to the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
Like how a society is organized is primarily ideological, and then that ideology interprets itself into the material world, as opposed to ideology having to change depending on what actually happens in the world. It's just a completely like wrong-headed way of looking at things. You have to analyze real conditions first.
It's an infantile disorder.
Yeah, but I've talked with Dankey Kang is like insane, dude. I feel like I'm platforming this guy by paying attention to him, but
again, like I don't know why he insists on calling all of us insane.
If we are insane, please let us know, because I'll have to go talk to a therapist or something. But
yeah,
I think we're doing
can you
okay.
please show an example of how we're insane?
Exactly. Like, show us the craziness. Vaush, if we're so insane, if we're so loopy, then show us something of us acting crazy, acting loopy. He's so afraid to actually like quote us in any kind of context. Whenever he does, he just skips around. It's embarrassing, dude. Like,
Yeah,
I am
Steve,
surprised that more of his fans haven't caught on to this, to be
I'm
honest.
sure a lot of them do, and they move on to better things. Like, it's
Yeah,
it's
I
just
hear.
like if you're just dipping your toes into leftism, like I can understand how someone like Vaush, who has like a charismatic personality and like seems like they kind of know what they're talking about, like, oh well, like they're not scary, they're not authoritarian, like, yeah, this seems like a good place to kind of jump in. But like it's like a caterpillar going into its cocoon and turning into a butterfly. Like,
Yeah,
eventually you'll get big enough where you kind of, if you're curious and you're actually interested in this kind of stuff, you'll like quickly kind of grow up and kind of learn a little bit more, and then you'll move on.
Vaush, he's like the training wheels of the left, but they're not well-adjusted training wheels. They're the kind that like destabilizes the bike, and eventually the little kid falls over and dies if you keep, using them. So you got to take them off eventually and stop listening to Vaush. Got to grow up.
Someone is wondering what my YouTube channel is. I actually don't have a YouTube channel right now. But Iron Curtain, the podcast, is really kind of where I'm kind of mostly on YouTube and Spotify and all that kind of stuff. So definitely check out Iron Curtain.
Yeah, I'll give a link to everybody's channel in the description. Of course, this is Dankey Kang channel, obviously, but Darksnovia, he's part of the Ewoks Unhinged group, and he also has his own channel. And Tactical Spork, like you said, he's part of the Iron Curtain podcast, so I'll also leave that in the description. And of course, Leftism Today. Everybody should have already gone out and subscribed to him already. So,
also, if you want to get more involved, especially with me and with Dankey and everything, really encourage you guys to check out Party of Communist USA, PC USA. We're doing really, really good work. Doing a lot of really good education projects and organizing efforts and everything like that. It's a really good group of people, really principled, and they're really looking to, they're really growing a lot, especially recently. So really recommend checking out the website. Maybe you could link that or something.
yes, absolutely. Check out the PC USA, because we are real leftists, not like this guy, not a pretender. We're the real deal, baby.
Many people have criticized me for saying insane flippantly when I speak about
Hello,
Tankies,
everybody, boys and girls.
but I really genuinely think they are. I don't know, dude. Every time I talk to them, they're like wild.
Wild.
That was extremely wild.
Wild.
Yep, I was so wild in all the conversations with him that never happened.
I was boofing out. Did you hear me screaming in that debate? I was like, metal artist.
Yeah, I heard you threaten to kill him and like choke him with his own intestines and stuff. Typical insane tanky shit. You threatened to send him to the gulag. I heard it.
Yeah, E equals S over S plus V. I'm very insane.
Interstellar Bruce is saying, when I search PC USA on YouTube, I get Presbyterian Church USA. Yeah, that's one little issue that we've been having. So go to partyofcommunistusa.com, or is it .org? Hang on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it's not
usa.org. Check
and,
us out there.
And it is not the Communist Party USA. It is the Party of Communists USA. Those are two different things.
Yes.
Oh no, PC USA goes to the Presbyterian Church. .org.
Yeah, they're doing a lot of great work spreading the good word.
You don't have to be a Presbyterian, but never hurts.
Yeah.
Oh god, that was funny. Oh god. Caleb Muffin went insane on his debate with Vaush. Oh wait.
Yeah.
Vaush.
He did.
Okay, Vaush, I know you probably haven't listened to this whole thing, but if you somehow randomly click on this point at the video, please just debate him with a moderator. Like, moderators are there to keep things fair and make sure that everybody has a chance to talk and they aren't screaming over each other. So like, come on, man. Like, just do it. If your ideas are superior, then debate him in the free marketplace of ideas.
Yeah, apparently he never calls Nazis insane lunatics. I don't know. He probably has occasionally. The guy streams 5 hours a day every day, so he's probably called him that at least once. But this one is pretty much true. He talks about MLs more disrespectfully than Nazis.
And no, he hasn't debated Vaush. He chickened out of it because Caleb wanted a moderator to keep things civil.
Hilarious.
From a day, oh man, I shouldn't platform him, dude. He gets like more views talking about me than he does anything else.
All right, so let's talk about that. So he doesn't want to platform me. Do you think that is because he is scared that people will actually listen to what I have to say and like jump ship? Because if that's true, that means he's actually watched my shit. He might have done it like privately, but if he actually like understands the threat that I pose to his channel, maybe he's like caught wise of that, and he's like, "Oh shit, I gotta steer everybody away from Dankey Kang."
Here's the thing: it's extremely easy if you have like a triple-digit IQ to easily debunk and destroy right-wingers, because pretty much all of their arguments are like just moronic. Like, just absolutely trash tier arguments. So like, if you're like a person with like just an average intelligence, you can easily debunk them. It's like, and it makes you look really intelligent too. Like, you know how like back like maybe like 5 years ago or more, like YouTube was dominated by like skeptics, like skeptic YouTube.
Oh yes, I was baptized in the fires of the skeptic community.
Yeah. So like, basically, all of those guys got started because they got started basically debunking creationism, and it was like, it got them a lot of views and a lot of clicks and everything. But it's actually really easy to debunk creationism, like, but it makes you look really smart. So a lot of these guys like kind of cut their teeth doing that, and then they got it into their heads that they were just geniuses, and then they decided to tackle things that were completely out of their depth. So I think this is a lot of like what Vaush is doing. He basically got his start debunking alt-right chuds, which is easy for him, and it gets him a lot of views and makes him look smart. But then he's terrified of debating anyone further to the left of him, because he realizes that he could debate all these alt-right dudes with basically no preparation and no education or effort on his part.
Yeah.
But debating these people who are further to the left of him requires him to actually put in work.
It really comes down to he's lazy. That's really what it comes down to. He's just a lazy ass. He doesn't want to take the time to actually try to figure out our arguments, figure out what we're trying to say. You can see this in how he treats all of us, how he treated Leftism Today, how he treated the stream with me and Darksnovia. He just skipped around. He didn't pay attention to anything we were trying to say. And when Leftism Today was debating him, I highly doubt he was even really listening to what Leftism Today was telling him. He was probably just trying to come up with the next gotcha quip. It's it just goes to show, like, he's really not out there for the ideas or for the discussion. He fancies himself like this master debater, but when push comes to shove, he will not debate a leftist because he's threatened by us. He's afraid.
Well, let's be real, people. He did lose a debate against Sargon of Akkad.
Famous intellectual Sargon of Akkad, yeah.
Who lost to Richard Spencer.
That is just pitiful. Absolutely pitiful.
No, I'm calling it. Vaush will debate Richard Spencer, and he'll lose.
I was telling somebody in the chat, like, a dead squirrel could debate Sargon of Akkad and still win by a mile. Like, how do you even manage to lose against him? I think I could be, like, drunk on just pure grain alcohol and still be able to somehow win against Sargon of Akkad.
I got a question. Has any of you guys heard of Young Ripa?
No, who is that?
He's an anarcho-capitalist. That you know what an NCAP is.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, he's a pretty good debater, but his ideology is shit. Vaush would lose against an NCAP if he debated against Young Ripa.
Oh boy, I'd love to see that fight. I wouldn't have any stake in that fight, but I'd love to just see the carnage.
I think it's going to happen. I think he's going to debate Young Ripa and lose. He's going to debate Richard Spencer and lose. I mean, Vaush is not a good debater. I mean, what kind of idiot looks up facts in the middle of a debate? I mean, seriously, he's going to criticize our content? Come on.
So, just to sort of wrap up the stream, I think we've done a great job here dismantling Vaush's pathetic attempt at damage control so far, but we'll just finish it out with the rest of this clip and then some final thoughts.
Vaush shamelessly lies about me and proves himself a coward. I don't know, dude. He can come on like anytime. Radlib calls me.
Except when I do, you won't actually like talk to me. It's and here's the thing, like, when you try to go on Vaush's stream, his website wants access to, like, your Twitter account and shit. Like, I don't feel comfortable giving my Twitter information to Vaush.
Oh boy.
Radlib Vaush calls me a lunatic king of the Tankies. Don't get full of yourself. You're more like a bastard prince.
Ooh,
I mean,
that's cool.
He called me that, though. He was the one who called me king of the Tankies.
You should put that in like your Twitter bio, like bastard prince of the Tankies. That's epic.
That would be cool. Yeah, I would accept that title over king of the Tankies.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, as MLs were against any sort of monarchy, but
yeah,
you know,
I'm definitely a bastard. I'm a big bastard. I'm probably the biggest bastard in the world to Vaush.
Caleb Malpin might be the king of the Tankies. Here's the child porn one. Here's the same one all the alt-writers focus on. It's interesting. It's only alt-writers who hyperfixate on this specific argument and try to misrepresent.
That's because it's true, you idiot.
Yeah, his child porn argument was horrible, and you ought to be ashamed, Vaush. You ought to be ashamed. Every single time you go out in public, somebody needs to, a little old lady needs to follow you, and she needs to throw oats at you and shame you.
Yeah, honestly, just hit him over the head with her handbag or something. Like,
yeah.
I wouldn't trust Vaush near anybody.
He needs like a wooden plank hung around his neck that just says like, I'm a baby boy and everyone spit on me. That's honestly the punishment he needs for that argument. That it's just a horrible, horrible argument. And it doesn't matter if someone is giving you grief if they're right wing or left wing in that case.
Well, Vaush, I mean, okay, if you're watching this, the one thing that I will say to you is I believed a lot of the same things that you believed back in the day before I did any real looking into it. So we do believe, I think, that Vaush could be redeemed. You do have the potential to become something great. And we're all kind of rooting for you to do so. Hopefully you can kind of learn a little bit more, and you could be a really awesome YouTuber someday.
I sure hope so.
Tankies. Vaush gloats about destroying class consciousness. What does that even mean? I love class
Jesus
consciousness.
Christ, ladies and gentlemen. Another day, another Vaush video is made. This video actually made like 2 days ago. It's weird listening to my voice
on the online. Yeah, I know how you feel.
Supporting long protest in logic. Well, that debate never came. Dipshit. He won't even let me speak for like 3 straight seconds before he skips around. Vaush wants to call himself. It sounds.
Yeah, he just skipped through 30% of your video in one click.
At least Destiny will like watch the video and put it up on 2 times speed or something.
Look at that, it's been 10 seconds. He's already done.
Incredible. This is his research. This is how Vaush does research. Donald Trump.
Oh my god.
Oh.
Look, all your lunacy is really shining through in this video.
It is. I came off like such a lunatic in those like 3 seconds worth of audio that he showed.
Yeah, you were just unhinged.
About my letters from a former
Calm
Tanky
down.
video, where somebody wrote me a big email about how my videos helped them realize their tanky communities were hyper counterproductive and abusive, and they wanted to leave them because they actually cared about working for the working class and not just jerking off with like a bunch of hyper authoritarian like 15-year-old dipshits.
So is that what we do in the Party of Communist USA? We don't.
It sounds like that like Albert Einstein copy pasta where it's like, oh man, this person came forward and they said like this epic own on the Tankies to me, and then everyone clapped. That guy's name was Albert Einstein. Like, I really doubt that actually happened. Come on, dude.
Somebody put me. Somebody in the chat put as the title that I had 3 quotations around, or 3 parentheses around Vaush's name. I don't do that. That's a Nazi dog whistle. Like,
yeah.
Like, it's right in front of your face, you stupid morons. Just look at the title itself. They're trying to say I'm a Nazi or something. It doesn't make any sense.
This is what it means to destroy class consciousness. Okay, there we go. Now I know.
Honestly, I feel like that whole letter thing, it feels really synthetic to me. Like, how do you go and learn about Marxism and then you just go back to anarchism? Like, that's not really the process that most people go through.
I've never even witnessed an ML turn back to anarchism. It just doesn't happen.
Especially back to Vaush. Like, who?
Oh god, yeah.
Who does the reading and then goes back to thinking Vaush is smart?
Yeah, for real.
But anyway, that's enough Vaush. He's a horrible human being. He's a horrible leftist. At least I hope everyone's takeaway from this stream is that he is a phony. That's should be self-evident.
Yeah. And I mean, if you're an ML and anybody calls you a fascist, just tell them that socialism defeated fascism and crushed it, and liberalism is what fascism grows out of. So basically, that's all I'm gonna say. Like, we are fully committed to serving the working class, making sure the working class gains power, and fighting for the rights of marginalized and oppressed people all over the world. And if anybody tries to tell you differently, then you can just come talk to us and we'll clear things up.
Absolutely. And like I said, link in the description for all of these fine comrades information. I want to thank everybody for coming on stream with me. Darksnovia, Tactical Spork, Leftism Today. You're all amazing comrades. And thank you so much for sharing with me in our mutual dislike for Vaush, our mutual dislike for phony pseudo-leftists, and all of that ilk.
All right. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on.
So thank you for watching, everybody. Thank you for your comments. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe. And if you're feeling frisky, check out the Party of Communists USA.
All right. Have a good one, everyone. Bye.
Later.
So.